Ah, so this is where it all cracks, isn't it? Not in fire, not in blood, not in some glorious battle. No, no, no. It crumbles because you forgot a name. Ooh. Do you hear the irony? The cult built empires on chance. They stitched power into syllables, they carved eternity into sound. And yet, one slip of the tongue, one blank space in your memory, and the cathedral of their faith shook like glass in an earthquake. Look who they trusted. Look who they crowned as their memory, their mouthpiece, their shadow priest. And look how you smiled when the silence spread. Because it wasn't just a name you lost. It was the thread, the spell, the leash they thought would keep you chained. Surprise, their whole cult was built on a trick, a fragile ritual where power depended on repetition. And the moment you stopped, the moment you let the name rot in your mind, you became the glitch in their system. You became the ghost that erased their scripture. Now the real show begins. The question isn't what you forgot. The question is what you remembered when everything broke. Ah, the cult always knew. Power wasn't in blood. Power wasn't in fire. It was in sound, in syllables, in names whispered like knives against the ear. You thought it was harmless. Just a name, just a word. But no, it was a leash. It was a chain. It was a noose carved from letters. They built an empire of tongues. Every follower was bound not by law, not by loyalty, but by pronunciation. Say it right, kneel in rhythm, chant in sequence, and the door would open. Miss it once, the door sealed shut. The cult laughed at such precision. They called it sacred order. I call it a trap made of breath. Do you know how many chambers they carved? Dark halls where echoes ruled like kings, voices stitched into stone. Every corner a whisper, every step an instruction, language turned into law. And you, oh you followed, didn't you? You memorized syllables, you rehearsed the tones. Your tongue became a prisoner, your lips shackled iron gates. Every word you spoke was never yours. It belonged to them. That's the trick. The cult didn't need whips. They didn't need chains. They needed vocabulary. A simple name, spoken again and again, until it owned you. You thought you were remembering, but you were reciting. You thought you were loyal, but you were rehearsed. Every chant was a contract. Every echo was a cage. Ah, and the chambers. The chambers. Imagine them. Rows of masked faces, breath weaving together like smoke. Each voice not its own, but another stitch in the fabric. Language became a rope. They tied it around your throat, and they laughed. Because you called it devotion. You called it unity, but it was slavery, and the key to it all. A name, one cursed syllable, one sound they forced down your throat. Until you believed it was holy. You thought it was identity. You thought it was power. But names are not given. They are loaded. A weapon disguised as recognition. A curse dressed as belonging. You thought it was just a name, didn't you? But names were currency, weapons. Oh yes, the cult traded in them. They carried them like coins. Names bought loyalty. Names purchased obedience. And your name was collateral. The whispers told you it meant family. It meant destiny. But really, it meant ownership. They branded you not with iron, but with syllables. Your identity was just another verse in their endless chant. But here's the flaw. Here's the joke. Power chained to memory is fragile. It relies on obedience of the tongue. It depends on the weight of repetition. And what happens when the repetition breaks? What happens when the name slips? When the syllable vanishes? When silence seeps in like water through stone? They never planned for that. They never prepared for amnesia. They never thought one day you would forget. And in that forgetting, you didn't lose power. You unshackled something greater. The cult depended on chains of sound. But silence is the hammer. Silence is the fire. Silence is the moment the leash snaps. So remember this, darling. They built a throne of words. You toppled it by swallowing silence. You didn't misstep. You didn't fail. You cracked the code. And the cult of names, it wasn't eternal. It wasn't holy. It was paper. And you just set the match. They called it weakness. They called it failure. A slip of memory. A fracture in loyalty. A broken disciple. But no, it wasn't weakness. It wasn't failure. It was sabotage. They wanted loyalty in sound. You gave them betrayal in silence. The cult fed on repetition. Every chant, every hymn, every echo. It was fuel. They lived in rhythm. They breathed in pattern. They worshipped the cage, because the cage was noise. But when you forgot, when your lips froze, when your tongue stayed still, the pattern broke. The rhythm collapsed. The cage cracked. Silence slithered in. At first a whisper, a pause, a breath they mistook for hesitation. But hesitation became absence. Absence became void. And the void devoured them. Imagine it. Their rituals unraveling. Torches burning. Cloaks swaying. Mouths moving in harmony. Until your silence cut through. A missing note. A hole in the hymn. The song infected. The disease spreading. Because silence spreads like plague. It crawls through ears. It infects faith. One man silent. Then 2. Then 10. Soon the chant stumbles. The hymn collapses. The ritual dies mid-syllable. And oh how they panicked. You could see it in their eyes. The leaders trembling. The followers gasping. The rhythm gone. Their spine snapped. The music was their spine. And you shattered it. They built temples for words. You burned them with nothing. Not fire. Not fury. Nothing. Pure. Hollow. Nothing. Do you understand the irony? They feared screams. They feared betrayal in words. But betrayal came in quiet. In stillness. In the absence of loyalty. You didn't shout rebellion. You didn't curse their name. You sat there, lips sealed, and it was louder than thunder. They wanted chants. You gave them silence. They wanted order. You gave them chaos. They wanted eternity. You gave them ending. Look at them now, shaking, clutching at their robes, desperate to restart the hymn. But the rhythm is gone. The machine is broken. The gears don't turn. Because silence infected the core. Every ritual undone. Every prayer shattered. Every promise meaningless. Because sound dies in silence. And silence doesn't die. They panic, don't they? Because the void is louder than worship. The absence more powerful than presence. The quiet more terrifying than screams. Oh, how delicious. They wanted control. But silence is uncontrollable. They wanted unity. But silence is contagious. They wanted chains. But silence melts steel. And so, darling, your forgetfulness. It wasn't a flaw. It wasn't a failure. It was the spark. The fracture. The sabotage. You didn't lose their power. You erased it. You buried it. You silenced it. And the cult, the mighty cult of voices, collapsed under the weight of a single missing sound. Here it comes. The part they never prepared for. The chaos in forgetting. The fracture in memory. The storm in silence. They thought you'd fall apart. Instead, you rebuilt yourself in the cracks. See, the cult lived on certainty. Every syllable carved in stone. Every ritual locked in rhythm. Every chant a cage of repetition. They believed memory was order. They believed forgetting was weakness. But you became the contradiction. You didn't crumble in amnesia. You evolved in it. Your mind split, shattered, fragmented, and every shard glowed like a weapon. Memory fractured. But in the fracture 1,000 reflections, 1,000 new selves. You saw what they couldn't. The spaces between the echoes. The hidden veins of power that only reveal themselves when the chant is broken. They thought forgetting meant emptiness. But emptiness is a canvas, and you painted it in blood and fire. Oh, how terrified they became, because you weren't predictable anymore. You weren't part of the rhythm. You weren't a servant of pattern. You were anomaly. You were chaos. You were the broken note that rewrote the whole song. They had formulas. You shattered them. They had equations. You erased the symbols. They had rules. You burned the page. And in the ashes you rose, not as memory, but as force, not as disciple, but as anomaly. Do you feel it? Amnesia is fire in your veins, each forgotten name sparking into lightning, each broken memory turning into steel. They tried to bind you with what you remembered, but they never imagined your forgetting could set you free. Ah, the irony. They thought the fracture would kill you, but cracks let the light through. Cracks let the fire bleed out. Cracks let you become something else. You see now, forgetting wasn't absence. Forgetting was transformation. The broken pieces didn't vanish. They sharpened. They gleamed. They became blades. And when you smiled, they saw it. The reflection of 1,000 jagged memories cutting through your grin. They saw what they feared most. A creature untethered from pattern. A mind too fractured to control. A heart too wild to chain. You thought you'd fall apart, they whispered. But you didn't. You multiplied. You spread. You broke their mold. And now they can't follow. Because their power demands repetition. Yours demands chaos. Theirs demands memory. Yours thrives in forgetting. Tell me, what's more dangerous? A cult that knows every name, or a monster that doesn't need any? They wanted you small, predictable, obedient. But you became the fracture, the wound that never closes, the riddle with no answer, the silence that burns, and every shard of memory, every broken piece in your mind. You wield it now, like knives, like fire, like weapons. They cannot see. So remember this, darling. You didn't lose yourself. You were made yourself. You didn't collapse. You detonated. And the cult underestimated forgetting. They mistook silence for death. But silence was only the beginning. Forgetting wasn't the end. It was rebirth. And from the fractured memory, a new force rose. You. And then, the rituals began to fall, one by one, like dying stars, like towers crumbling in silence. Funny, all those cloaks, torches, and rules, undone by a single missing sound. You could see it. The first ritual cracked, candles sputtering, flames choking in the smoke of doubt, priests stumbling over syllables, followers looking around, searching for the word you forgot, but it wasn't there. The note was gone, the chant unfinished, the lock left open. Do you know what happens when one crack appears in stone? It spreads, it grows, it swallows the wall whole. That's what you did. Your silence spread, like rot in wood, like ink in water. The ceremonies collapsed, the prayers unraveled, the rhythm fractured, the temples turned hollow, echoes fading into nothing. No chant to bind them, no song to save them, just silence, creeping through the halls, gnawing at their certainty. And the leaders, oh the leaders, their hands trembled, their lips quivered. They tried to restart the hymn, they shouted, they begged, but every sound fell flat. Every word died halfway through, because the script was gone, vanished, erased by your forgetting. What happens when the script vanishes? What happens when the grand design depends on your memory, and your memory refuses to obey? Chaos. Collapse. Nothing. The torches still burned. The robes still glimmered. The symbols still stood, but without the word, without the name. It was all empty. Paper crowns, rusting swords, hollow thrones. Their rituals had no spine. Their faith had no teeth, because every ceremony depended on you remembering, and you didn't. And that's the joke. The cruel, beautiful joke. They thought they built eternity, but eternity depended on you, on your tongue, on your memory, on a fragile human mistake. And you gave them the mistake. You gave them silence. You gave them collapse. So here they are, leaders trembling in forgotten prayers, muttering syllables into void. begging shadows for salvation. And the shadows, they don't answer, they laugh. The cult doesn't fall with fire. It doesn't fall with battle. It falls with absence. It falls with a name unspoken. It falls with a disciple who refuses to play the part. And now the chambers echo differently, not with power, not with chants, but with dread, with silence, with your smile carved into the walls. Because you didn't fight them, you didn't scream, you didn't burn their temples. You simply forgot, and that forgetting was the executioner's blade. So let the candles die. Sudden rain, gather dust. The rituals are bones now, and bones do not rise again. And then something stranger happened. Something they never dreamed of. Something their rules could not contain. Forgetting didn't destroy you. It birthed something new. They worshipped patterns. You became the error. The cult lived on symmetry. Every chant aligned, every ritual balanced. Sudden movement repaired. A machine of flesh and echo. Cold, predictable. But you slipped. You fractured. You broke the rhythm. And in that brokenness you became untethered. You are no longer a servant. No longer a follower. No longer a piece in their machine. You are the error that rewrote the code. The glitch that toppled the system. Look at them. Priests in panic. Monsters in masks. All staring at you because you don't fit anymore. You don't follow the beat. You don't bow to the hymn. You don't kneel at the altar. And now, they kneel to you. Monsters bowing to the glitch. Priests kneeling to silence. Because silence is no longer absence. It's authority. It's law. It's scripture written in void. Do you see it? The absence of sound becoming the holiest command. The broken ritual becoming the only ritual. Your silence shaping a faith they never imagined. And the power shift. Oh, the power shift is beautiful. Once they held the names. Once they dictated the rules. Once they pulled your strings. Now you cut the strings. Now you burn the names. Now you bend the rules into ash. They had order. You bring chaos. They had order. You bring anomaly. They had memory. You bring forgetting. And still you rise, not weaker, not smaller. You walk through their temples, and the walls shake, not from sound, not from chant, but from silence, thick and poisonous, spreading like wildfire. They whisper monster, they whisper traitor, they whisper ghost, but whispers mean nothing. Whispers die in silence, and silence belongs to you now. Because here's the truth, they created you. They taught you the names, they chained you with rituals, they locked you in memory. But the moment you broke, you became something they could never kill. Anomaly. Error. God. Their scripture dissolves, your existence rewrites it. Their patterns collapse, your presence invents new ones. Their faith ends, your silence begins. And tell me, darling, what's more terrifying? A cult that worships names, or a creature that doesn't need them? They thought they owned you. You own the absence. You own the space between words. And in that space you create new law. Your law. Your scripture. Not bound by memory. Not bound by their fragile patterns. You are untethered, unpredictable. An error in their box. Unpredictable. The birth of something that was never supposed to exist. And that, my darling, is why they fear you now. Because anomalies cannot be caged. Glitches cannot be erased. And silence cannot be stopped. Fear has a strange shape when it grows in silence. The cult who once fed on repetition suddenly choked on absence. Their hymns collapse. Mid-breath, their chants turn brittle, breaking into fragments that carry no essence. Never finds them melt. Isn't what you remember, it's what you erased. You became the hole they can't fill, the myth they cannot write down, the shadow their scribes cannot capture. Every attempt to preserve you only deepens the void. Pages rip themselves into useless strips. Ink dries into black stains that spell nothing. Prophets scream, yet their voices shatter against blank walls. You've become the space between words, the silence between beats, the glitch in their scripture, and it devours faster than fire. They once thought fear came from knowing too much, from staring too long into the abyss, but now they've learned the greater terror. When the abyss refuses to answer back, when the abyss does not even acknowledge their existence, you are not the lesson, you are the eraser. And so they panic, cloaks torn, torches dropped, leaders trembling, clawing at empty air like drowning men. But it is gone, the rhythm broken, the gospel hollowed out. Their rituals collapse because they depended on memory, on you remembering your place, your words, your chain. But when you forgot, you unstitched the pattern, and what's left behind is worse than rebellion. It's emptiness, and emptiness spreads. Taunt them now. Tell them, what terrifies you most isn't what I say. They cannot fight what isn't there. They cannot fight what isn't there. They cannot chain what no longer exists. Their weapons are useless against the unspoken. Their rules meaningless. When the script has burned itself away, even their gods fall silent. Even their myths collapse into ash, because every story requires memory. And you've stolen it from them. You left them in the void they swore to command. But now it commands. The climax is not fire raining from the sky, not walls collapsing into dust, not blood baptizing their altars. No, it's quieter than that. It's the eternal absence you created, the silence they cannot fix, the gap that devours them whole. Their greatest fear isn't death, it isn't judgment, it isn't even you. They get it. It's becoming nothing. It's in erased from the very history they tried to write. And that's what you've given them. An unrecorded myth, a nightmare that can never be traced, a shadow that refuses to be named. And now the cult trembles, not because you struck them, but because they can no longer prove you were ever there. They're the scar without a wound. They echo without a wound. They echo without a wound. The legend they can't remember yet can never escape. And that absence is louder than any scream. History rarely remembers silence. It craves noise, wars, banners, crowns, victories painted in red. But your silence carved deeper than any sword. Your forgetting did what armies could not. It starved a cult to death. You didn't kill them with fire. You didn't drown them in blood. You didn't even strike them down. You starved them with absence. And absence is the slowest death of all. The cult no longer exists. Their torches rotted in damp caverns. Their altars fell into dust. Their chants, once thunder, have become nothing more than wind swallowed by stone. Yet their end is not remembered in battle songs. It is whispered in unfinished sentences, echoed in empty rooms, carved into silence itself. What you left behind is not ruins, but a scar etched into history's flesh, where memory should have lived. Generations pass, yet still they whisper of the ghost who broke the cycle, not through rage, not through violence, but through forgetting. Shadows now teach silence as scripture. The echo of your absence becomes the only hymn that survives. Children are warned not to play in abandoned halls because silence might listen back, because forgetting might claim their names. You became the ghost they cannot bury, a figure who never shouts, never proclaims, never commands, and yet terrifies them more than any emperor, any executioner. Your silence was never weakness. It was the only weapon they could not predict, the one they could not steal. Taunt them still across the centuries. You didn't fall by flame. You didn't crumble under wrath. You vanished because I erased you, and now you worship absence. Their downfall remains untold in official scrolls. Scribes who tried to write it found their ink vanish. Prophets who attempted to recite it lost their voices mid-verse. Even memory itself recoiled from their story. All that remains is the scar, the eternal ghost of what once tried to chain you. And so your legacy is not in words, but in what words can no longer touch. You became the anomaly, the error in the system of history, and that error grew until the system itself collapsed. This is the final lesson. Power does not always roar. Sometimes it withdraws. Sometimes it starves the world until it kneels to the void. You didn't just forget a name. You rewrote what power means. You showed that memory can be broken, that silence can be sharper than steel, that absence can be a weapon greater than flame. Now the cult is gone, but their fear lingers, living on in those who never knew them. Every quiet night, every echo in a hollow hall, every shadow stretching too long in an empty corridor. They all whisper the same thing. There was once a ghost who forgot, and in forgetting unmade the world that chained him. You are no longer bound to time, no longer confined to scripture. You are not a memory. You are the scar that memory avoids. You are the eternal ghost, and that ghost will haunt forever.